Okay, we are live with episode 4.
Number 3.
This is 3.
Number 3.
Next week is 4. Episode 3 of Addicts in Recovery, and since it is the last week of the month, what we are doing is we are bringing on guests that we can get a, quiz on what it is like to live in recovery. And so we have actually brought our friend on. This is Kevin. Say
Hello.
hi. Kevin is in... How long have you been in recovery for now?
The better part of 5 years, I bet.
5 years. That's a really long time.
It is.
Well, it's good to have you on here, Kevin. You're lucky. You're number 1. You're our first guest.
Yay.
We chose you special for this episode.
Because when we have millions of listeners, they're going to be like, who is this Kevin guy?
Like, we gotta meet him. Where do we get his autograph?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically the format of this one is we're just going to ask you a couple questions and kind of get a feel of what it's like in the life of someone who's doing this, like who's living in recovery and who's
Cool.
doing well. So, Mike, go ahead with your first question.
Yeah, well, let's jump into it. Life of active recovery. That's kind of what Zach touched on, and obviously there's all walks of life. Everyone has their own quest. Everyone has their own trail that they're following to, in this recovery pattern. And we just thought it'd be fun to bring you on and talk about it in your story. And let's see here. My first question I have for you is, why did you choose to change? Like, what was it? Did you have like an aha moment, or like did you hit the rock bottom, or what happened? Like, tell me about it.
So I didn't actually. I knew I had a drinking problem. It was obvious to myself and everyone actually, but I didn't know it was alcoholism. I knew I was drunk every day, starting in the morning when I woke up, and that I couldn't function without it. But I didn't. I guess I was just super naive. I didn't know that it was alcoholism. I thought alcoholism was something else. I thought alcoholism was what people had that sat on the side of the street in a gutter
Or a sign for food.
Yes, exactly. And I didn't know that, I even had people tell me for years and years that I was an alcoholic, but I never equated that to myself. I thought that I had some kind of character weakness. I didn't know it was. I know this sounds funny now, but I just thought it was weak and I would be able to kick it someday, but it couldn't possibly be this thing that other people called alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in a house. I had a pretty decent job that I've always been able to maintain. I was a functional alcoholic. So I knew what alcoholism was. I just didn't know that it applied to me and my lifestyle, I suppose. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that does. Did you, with your work and in your life, I mean, how did it affect it?
So,
like, did your coworkers or people you're working with, did they ever like pull you aside, or like, did you ever have anybody
all the
time, really?
all the time, for years and years, actually.
Like, Kevin, you got to get your shit together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're.
Yeah, I was. I'm the guy that went to work with, and I was constantly sick. I was always making up reasons and excuses for being late, or I usually showed up to my job, but I would show up drunk, and then I would just say, gosh, I'm coming down with a cold, and I never realized that I said that just about every week. And and I'm serious, or I have my blood sugar is really low, or I have allergies super bad right now, and it was like December and snowing outside.
Right. And they're like, Kevin, you clearly smell like vodka.
Exactly.
It's a cold.
Exactly. So, and what ended up happening is, I was at work one day and my boss came up to me and said, I was asking him some questions about anxiety because I was going through so many anxiety attacks. I was popping Xanax like they were M&Ms. I couldn't leave the house without a bottle in my pocket because the anxiety attacks would just completely make me dysfunctional. I would just completely close down. And I had mentioned anxiety to my employer because he was in the area at the moment. I said, "Have you ever had problems with anxiety?" And he just said, "Hey, Kevin, can we talk for a second?" And he said, "Look, I think you might have a problem with alcohol."
When that happened, I mean, did you jump like straight into defense mode?
Oh, bad.
Where you're you don't know.
Did I tell you the story already? So what happened?
You haven't told the listeners.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I see. So what happened was he actually said, I myself happened to go to the 12-step meetings, and he said it's called AA, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to one tonight, and you're welcome to join me. And I just looked him straight in the face and said, AA is for alcoholics, and I'm not going to one of those meetings. But my face literally flushed. I was red. Mm-hmm. I was really offended that someone had called me an alcoholic that I considered above me in the stature of life. He was my employer, and he just called me out, and I literally yelled at him, and I said, "I only drink at night." That's what I said, and which was a total lie. But I just said, "I only drink at night," and he just said, "Hey, calm down, calm down. I was just offering." Mm-hmm. And he said, "It's okay. Let's just drop it." And he walked out of the room. And for the rest of that day, it happened sort of midday on my work day, and I started, after I calmed down, I started spinning in my mind, "Oh my God, maybe I'm an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Maybe I have this problem." And
so are you saying that's like your first kind of change
that
moment?
That was my first aha, I need to change something moment. The rest of the time, for the years before that, I would literally spend time at home trying to not buy alcohol before I left for home after work, or trying to maintain the amount that I had at home while I was drinking, praying that I could stop drinking. I don't know what's wrong with me. Why can't I not do this? But like I said, I didn't know it was alcoholism. I just figured I would just die from it, really. But when I understood the way
let me back up for a second. So you said, I wanted to touch on this, the quantity of having it around you.
Okay.
Because I struggled with that as well, and it was hard to like. Mm-hmm. I wanted it. I wanted to know where it was. I needed to. What were like some of your habits in that way?
So I was a hoarder of it basically, because I was always afraid of running out. I never had enough of it. So I would, even though I would tell myself, hey, today I'm buying 3 bottles or 4 boxes of wine, or because I had tried every single, tried shifting alcohols, thinking, I tried the artsy thing. Well, maybe I'll drink wine and it'll be artsy and acceptable.
Right. I will learn how to paint.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you justify your problem.
I did. I even bought wine books that I never read. But I was constantly obsessed on whether I had enough at home.
Okay.
Or I would buy so much the first day thinking, okay, this will last me. And then I would drink it all until there was only, a couple glasses left for the next day. And then I would, have to buy more and then stockpile.
Sure.
And once I had, like a certain amount at home, I felt safe. Like my whole life felt safe, actually, as long as I had enough to drink.
Sure. Does it feel good now that you've been sober for as long as you had and actually see some of these same patterns that you see through other people, and you're like, okay, like this is really a bigger deal than I thought. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
everywhere,
Completely.
and I'm not alone in the way that this pattern is.
So I was completely floored when I started going to meetings and listening to people talk. That other people had this exact same
Process.
problem. Yeah, this exact same. They did the exact same thing.
Yeah,
I thought I was the only person on the planet that did these things.
yeah,
Stashing alcohol.
Sure.
In case someone tried to take it away, I would always have 3 or 4 different places where they didn't know where it was hidden.
Well, the one of the problems I had was trying to throw it away, because eventually, like, my wife would see cans in the garbage can and she'd be like, "Whoa, there's a lot more cans than I thought that there were that you said you were drinking."
Right.
So, pretty funny, quick story. When I was building my house, I had all these fence posts that were, vinyl white posts. And at night, I would go drink and I'd go throw the cans inside those posts.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, just because I was like, I got to get rid of them.
God,
They'll
that's
be in the
clever.
ground. So this is the irony of the whole thing. So the fence subcontractor came over to my house and to install all of the panels. And, like a couple weeks later, and he's like, "Mike, you're not going to believe this." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "You got to come outside." He's like, "Every one of your fence posts has like at least a 12-pack of cans in each one."
Right.
And I was like,
Those bastards.
I'm like, because it's because like the neighborhood, there was a lot of construction going on, so I just like instantly blamed on the construction workers. I'm like, man, those construction workers must have a drinking problem.
Right.
It's just so how fast when he asked me that and kind of was talking to me about it, I just jumped the other way. It's like, it's everyone else's problem. It's not my fault.
Right.
It was funny, really funny.
I remember trying to smash up my empty cans, and I'd put them in a Walmart bag, and I'd put them in my car and take them to the gas station to throw them away, so that the people in my home wouldn't see them in my own garbage can. The amount.
You're definitely not alone.
Right. But yeah, but like, just to answer that question, that first question, that is when I decided that if somebody else that was intelligent and had a job and that I looked up to could recognize that I was alcoholic, and that he thought, he felt like he had the same problem, then it was possible that that's what it was. It was alcoholism. And so I didn't jump immediately into recovery. I actually went home, and I first off, I thought I was going to lose my job because I just screamed at my boss. And
You get fired.
Right. And I went home and I opened up my laptop and I Googled AA to find out exactly what it is and what they stood for. I had heard of it my entire life. As a matter of fact, when I was a younger adult, when I was like 18, 19, I was court ordered quite a few times to go to AA meetings because of my drug use, like in school and like some other, ludicrous things I had done when I was a teenager. And I had gone to those meetings before, but I never understood what they were because I was always high or drunk when I went. And as a matter of fact, they would come up to me and say, "Hey, have you been reading the big book? Do you have a big book?" And I would say, "Yeah, I have one at home." And I never knew. I probably went to AA for the equivalent of maybe a year, like all put together, and I never knew that there was a big book of AA. I thought they were talking about the Bible, like the entire time.
You're like, "Where's
So
the King
I would
James
just
version?"
say, yeah, I would just say, "Yes, thank you. I have a book at home." Yeah. But I Googled AA and started reading about it, and there's a little test that you can take on their main page website. And I went through and I actually clicked the little boxes that applied to me, and then it kind of gives you a result. And I think mine said something like,
Congratulations,
Yeah.
you're fucked.
yeah,
A banner flies across. Like,
Yeah.
congratulations,
Right.
you are an alcoholic.
right. Code red, get involved. Yeah, and if the way I looked at it, if he knew a way out, I was going to do anything possible to follow him out of the hole that I was in, because I was utterly and totally miserable.
But you must have really respected him.
I did.
If somebody had that type of power over it, not power, but vibe. What would you say? Vibe?
I just had a lot
Presence?
of respect
Presence,
for him.
yeah.
Yeah, presence. Yeah, so, I mean, he was my employer, and You know, he owned the business that I was working at, and so I guess I just viewed him as an intelligent person that knew what he was doing. You know, I realized later that, you know, in the program, really no one knows better what they're doing than anybody else, other than some people succeed, and so you do what the successful ones do. But if he knew a way to not drink and still be alive, then I was going to follow his secret. I also didn't felt like, well, until I can maybe admit that I'm an alcoholic, you know, because maybe I kind of thought, well, maybe I have a problem that's so similar to alcoholism, I can go to these meetings and actually gain something out of it and still not be an alcoholic. You know?
You just didn't want the label.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't want the label. But I didn't, before that conversation actually took place, before somebody came and told me about the problem, I honestly couldn't conceive of more than going maybe a day without drinking.
Okay.
So digging a little deeper, what are the benefits that you have seen because of making this decision to change, like in your life? So say in your relationships, what have they gotten stronger, or maybe some relationships have, you know, fallen off? What are some benefits, things like that?
Benefits. So there's so many benefits. It's hard to say. I've had people ask me questions like that before. Well, they'll come and say, well, you know, is this better? Is that better? And after a while of being sober, you forget how much better that it is, because in a way it's so different that it's simply not comparable anymore. And you forget where you were, because things are so much better all the time. You know, I mean, there's still, you know, like hard days and, you know, bad shit happens to good people and stuff like that. But the benefits, I don't think I've ever been this healthy in my entire life. I'm 49, and before most of my time was eaten up by spending my time alone in the garage drinking, like after work. The thought of, I remember somebody when in very, very early recovery, they were talking about going hiking, and I was thinking, I can't, and they pointed at a trail on a mountain. Actually, we were driving by it. And I said, there's no way I could hike up a hill like that. I'm not healthy enough. And they said, but you are healthy enough. You just don't see yourself as being healthy enough. And I went and I tried it, and I survived. And I went, oh my gosh! I live right next to the mountains, and I'm not sure that I ever realized what the mountains were for. Mm-hmm. They were just, you know, to mark an eastwardly direction. And so I picked up mountain biking. I picked up hiking. I picked up yoga right away. I got very involved in taking care of myself. No one tells you that when you stop drinking that suddenly there's 72 hours in every day. Mm-hmm. There's all this time that you have sober that you weren't aware of when you were drunk, because you were drunk.
Well, but your patterns as well. I remember my therapist when I was in rehab. He said, I was telling about all these like weird stories of where I'd hide and this and all these trails of how to find my alcohol. And he was just like, Mike, think about how much time you were wasting inside your brain and what you actually could accomplish in an actual day. You know, he's like, you're like a Houdini.
Right. Yeah.
Use that to benefit you, not hurt you.
Right. Yeah. So as far as benefits, I would say when they talk about God shots in AA, I'm sure you've heard of those. I've decided that a lot of those are when things suddenly make sense, because I would say that one of the biggest benefits that I've gotten out of quitting drinking is my ability to follow a straight line of thought to the end, from a beginning to end. to be able to think out a problem all the way through. And when things start to make, I know, right?
It's incredible.
It
It's
really
so
is.
cool.
When I think when that first started, you know, your mind starts to heal, your brain starts to be able to channel thoughts more clearly. It literally seems miraculous. It literally feels like a moment of clarity that can only be attributed to a higher power. And sometimes I wonder that people that don't have addiction problems or chemical dependency problems live in that state of mind all the time, you know, and they just take it for granted.
Yeah,
because to think clearly is just one of the most precious gifts out of this I've gotten.
Well, I think you forget. You know, you forget what life is about. You forget those small, simple things that like progress you, move you, and then you cloud that with addiction, and then you start regaining that. It feels so much like so much clarity is around you. Just like I'm having fun again.
Right.
I'm enjoying life again. Like waking up in the morning's not like throwing up in the and just trying to, you know, puke it out to get rid of it. But like you wake up and you're like, let's do this.
Right.
This is my day.
Yeah, and it's nice to have the mind racing toned down. You know, being able to have a gentle thought, or just being able to sit at peace with yourself for any amount of time.
Sure.
You know, without being under some kind of sedation. Or,
Yeah.
you know, even if you can get 5 minutes of just a restful mind, it's well worth the whole journey.
Yeah.
So I want to go back just a little bit, and
Okay.
before we go on to this next question, you were talking about how it's easy to forget how miserable it was.
It is.
Just a little bit ago.
It is.
And like what Mike was saying, sometimes we forget. Well, I guess it depends. I had been habitually using, I mean, whatever I could get my hands on since I was a kid. I didn't really have that whole come back to reality thing. It was like reality smacked me in the face. But as far as longer term sobriety, what are you doing? Like, what do you do to help keep yourself on, I guess, a level of awareness so that you don't forget how bad it was?
So, I was introduced to the AA route. That is definitely not the only route. I think you can find sobriety in many different avenues. In the route that I was introduced to, it just happened to work for me. So I follow that way. One of the things in my program on how to stay sober and how to remember actually how bad it got without reminding myself by going there is to listen to other people's stories in new recovery. And so I go to meetings and there's always the shaky guy that just walked in that can't say his own name, and you know, when they do start to speak, I think, wow, that's where I was. That's where I don't want to go back to, you know. And it makes me grateful for my own recovery and the time that I have. Another way, I suppose, although it wasn't on purpose, is I happened to work at a rehab, and a drug and alcohol rehab, and I get to see the same faces and or the same people with the same problems come in, and I can see the changes coming over them, and that's how I get reminded of it.
So I got a question kind of tying into that.
Okay.
Describe like your first day being sober to your first week to month to year. Let's just talk about that.
Okay. So my first day being sober, I hated it. So I want to tell these people.
Shocking.
It's like a heart attack,
So
fuzzy in the head. Yeah.
right. I don't know if I want to do this. That kind of a thing. I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. Not with the. I would have been able to go without a drink for a day on my own. I had done it before.
was because it was a Sunday and the liquor store was closed.
Yeah, either that, yeah,
Just kidding.
exactly. Either that or literally my body was so beat up that I physically couldn't take another day of drinking. I had to have at least 8 hours off. So, but I hear sometimes people telling stories of like, oh yeah, I recovery's great, and when you first get sober everything's wonderful and whatever. That wasn't my story, and I kind of, when people tell me those kind of things, I wonder what they're trying to sell me, because it's rough. It's a big mental mind game, and not just mental. It's severely physical. I can't remember exactly how long it took for the shaking to go away. I don't remember, or how to keep my food on a fork. I remember going to my first meeting, and I was having a cup of coffee, and it was just spilling all over my hands. And this guy, and I was so embarrassed, And this guy next to me reached over, and he grabbed my hand and held my hand the entire time and didn't let go the entire meeting.
Wow.
And
at what point were you like, okay, this is kind of awkward?
I was awkward, but it was even more awkward when he was talking to me, telling me that he wanted me to take me to the emergency room because he thought I was going to go into seizure. And I was like, I just want to get out of here. Like, but it mellowed out. First off, I think what made it bearable to me is I had someone to talk to about it. So I had met, I didn't go to AA meetings right away when that happened at work. It took me about 2 weeks. I kept saying, I'm going to be done when all the alcohol in my house is drank. And I remember I had a box of Franzia, that wine, because I'm, super artsy that way. and I found out which wine had the highest alcohol content and bought that for the flavor. And
to pair it with your salmon and your asparagus.
Exactly. And for some reason it would just never run out, because I just kept buying more before it ran out, and so that way I didn't have to commit. But I finally just said I don't want to do this anymore. I'm gonna give this a try. And I had met a couple of people. It was really odd. Because I kind of started like whispering to a couple of people at my work, hey, I think I'm going to quit drinking. And they'd be like, oh, this one guy, like he goes to meetings and he's an alcoholic and you should talk to him. And it turns out there was like maybe 8 people where I worked that were in recovery, and I never knew. I had no idea. And so I started kind of talking to them, like
So that took you about like the first month-ish?
About the first month.
Okay.
And then when I had kind of built a small base of people to talk to about it is when I said I'm gonna go to my first meeting. And I went, and I talked to somebody probably 20 times in a text that first day. And then as it progressed, the first day wasn't the hardest. I bet towards the end of the first week, it became harder, even for me. I remember texting and talking to people and calling them on the phone, because in order to buy, I couldn't do it 24 hours at a time. Sometimes I had to do it 15 minutes at a time. I would walk down the stairs and then walk up the stairs and pace. And I remember thinking, my God, I just stayed sober for the amount of time it took me to walk down a flight of stairs.
Wow.
So I bought myself that 37 seconds sobriety. You know what I mean? And
well, you told me one time too with Zach we talked about this a while ago, that you said that when you fill up your car with gas, you would not go into the gas station.
I did. I remember that, and somebody gave me that advice one time, and it stuck. Because I couldn't pass a gas station without what I used to do is I'd walk into a gas station, go get beer, a couple 30 packs, and and then pay for my gas. I had to. I couldn't conceive of walking into a store and not shopping for beer at the same time, or something to that effect. And so, and it's funny. This guy used to say. He used to say at meetings, he was a character. He used to say about going into a liquor store. He used to say, "Well, why would you go to a horror house and order a ham sandwich?" and I hated that. I thought it was like the grossest line, but it's true. I have no
Business.
I have no business being in a liquor store or around the beer aisle if I'm not there to buy beer or liquor.
Right.
So why would I walk in there? So I stopped going into the store to pay for my gas. I bought it at the pump. I really had no reason to go in there if I was just going to get gas.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
it helped a lot.
It's just, you start cutting back your habits.
Right, just changing what I did from day to day. I also stopped. This sounds insane, but I had to stop for just a little while doing the things that I normally associated with drinking, like mowing the lawn and my riding lawnmower. Because I had never done it sober before. Isn't that incredible? I had never done. It was like my drinking time on the lawnmower. I knew every place on that riding lawnmower that I could put a tall boy. And it was incredible. I was super talented.
And as soon as you're sober, all of your lines were perfectly straight.
Right. But I had people, and I'm not the only one that was like that. That had to actually let my lawn get pretty tall and ask other people to mow my lawn because it was so triggering for me.
Wow.
And I've had other people say, "Look, I can't fold my laundry sober. I don't know how to do it. It's super triggering for me." And I'd be able to let it. Maybe you're going to have to wear wrinkled clothes for a while because it's better to wear wrinkled clothes for a while and stay sober long term. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Has it when so we were talking kind of about the first week and then the first month, and how you really had to have this almost heightened level of avoidance of certain places, of certain things, of certain people.
Yes.
Do you still, I think this is a really good point to emphasize, do you still have that heightened sense of awareness, or can you, in the point where you're at now, can you go hang out with friends who have been drinking? Can you walk into a gas station and buy a soda and not have to worry about getting a beer?
Yes. And it's funny that you even brought that to a point, because I remember the first time that I went grocery shopping and I didn't look at the price of a 30-pack, to see if it was on sale. And I walked out and it literally hit me like a ton of bricks. I just went to the grocery store and I didn't even walk down the beer aisle. I literally got chips and bread and milk and shit like a normal person. I'm sorry, I just swore.
We say shit.
I was going to say,
Okay.
I've dropped the F-bomb so many times on this thing.
Good. But that was really surprising to me. That was, and I noted it as a milestone that I can walk into a gas station, and I don't even think about going into the beer cooler, or I don't think about. I used to sit at AA meetings and look at the clock and think, when this meeting's over, the liquor store is going to close. And
wow. Yeah. Knowing the
like,
hours and
knowing the hours and well, if I left this meeting in 15 minutes, I could, you know what I mean? And but I don't notice anymore. I have no business being in I don't have to tell myself I have no business. I don't think of it anymore.
So within your first year, did you start feeling more comfortable about 4 or 5 months, 6 months, 7 months into it? When did you start feeling like you could kind of take a deep breath and be like, okay, I really am doing this. I'm making a real effort of it changing.
Yeah, I don't know how many months. I couldn't tell you. It was at 6 months or whatever. But I did. I had a really hard time with people coming to my house and for barbecues and things like that. People that I normally associated with would come over and would drink pretty heavily. I noticed right away that I couldn't have it past the threshold of my door. If they wanted to drink outside and have a beer, like if I had a barbecue or whatever, they could drink outside. But once it was in my home and somebody was holding a beer or a cocktail at the dining room table in my home, it was a problem for me. It just looked really good. It looked like it belonged in my home, and it was a problem. And so I would ask, hey, would you mind like taking that outside? And and then I quickly started realizing who respected that and who didn't.
Well, kind of to tie into that, did you actually tell like your friends, family, close people like of what you were doing? Because you didn't go to like a 30-day treatment, and everyone was like, okay, where's Kevin? He's obviously gone. What happened to him?
Right.
But when did you feel comfortable doing that?
After about 6 months, I was really because in all honesty, I didn't think it was going to work. I wanted it to work very badly. I was curious, but I didn't want to do it and give it a try, tell everybody, and then fail. So I remember I even hid my book and anything that I had related to alcoholism recovery. I was hiding it from my daughter. I was hiding it from my other half at home. I had talked briefly with him about that, and he didn't think it was going to work either, and he thought it was a bad idea, frankly. And so I wasn't comfortable. At 6 months, after I had proved I could do it for 6 months, which was huge. I don't want to even underestimate, what a month is when you've been under the slavery of alcoholism for any length of time. It was massive for me. And after 6 months, I finally let people know that I was in recovery and that I wasn't drinking anymore, and everybody said, "Yeah, we noticed." Like
obviously
people that I didn't drink around. Everybody knew.
Were you upset with any of them, or like, why didn't you tell me earlier?
Were any of them upset with me?
Yeah. You're like, obviously you noticed, but not that it was their just responsibility, but I just
no, nobody was upset with me about it. I was afraid to tell people, not only because I was afraid it wasn't going to work, but I was afraid of them judging me. Which is so, I can be a...
That seems so backwards with you. Knowing you as long as I have, I'm like, whoa.
I was afraid of them knowing... I was afraid of what they would think when I told them that I was an alcoholic. I was afraid of the judgment. And it's so funny because I could be, a loud, sloppy, piss myself drunk and not be afraid of what they thought of me.
Right.
But when I got sober, I was afraid of what they were going to think of me, where before I was numbed out and didn't really care what they thought.
That's something really, really powerful, because you're obviously, I mean, it's not hidden that you can't be the only one that thought about that.
Right.
That they all knew. I mean, people were constantly coming up to me and telling me, like, I have a problem. And now I'm almost embarrassed to let them know that I addressed that problem. Because then it shows me as someone with almost a defect, someone different than other people.
Right.
And I'm a separate entity. And nobody wants to be separated. Nobody wants to be... And I think that's a huge part of the stigma that comes with addiction and with alcoholism is addicts, alcoholics, I think it's the same thing, are different or are less than what normal people in society are, when in reality, we just make that shit up in our heads. And I think you put it really well of how absurd that sounds out loud.
It's super contradictory.
I don't give a shit about whether you judge me when I'm drunk, but I am terrified of you finding out that I got sober.
Right.
And people think that way. They do. And I mean, we all laughed about it now, but it's a very valid thing. And
Right.
so I thought that was really, you put that really well.
Thanks.
I like that.
Cool. Yeah, I think it might be the difference of being a failure and hiding behind your pride, and then that sense of vulnerability when you have to come out behind that pride and say, "I need help." That's you know, and when you make yourself vulnerable in that way is when you become subject to the fear of someone's judgment of, well, why do you need help? You're like a failure at being a successful alcoholic. You know, it's an odd anomaly, and I think it keeps a lot of people in their addiction, in active addiction, because they're too afraid to come out and say.
Well, I think a lot of people just get like really comfortable with it too. They're like, this is my lifestyle, these are my friends, this is what I'm doing.
Sure.
And like to actually make that change, that was what was hard with me. I talked with Zach about this last week, was like telling my wife that, of saying, hey, like I can't imagine myself going to like a New Year's party with a bunch of friends and like not having champagne or something.
Right.
It's very different to like
Right.
come to that realization of how hard that is, or like a peer pressure. Oh, what's wrong? Why aren't you doing this? You have a
Right.
problem?
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't have to make it too big of an adjustment as far as like, I was afraid that I was gonna have to like ban certain friends from coming to my house, and that is, recovery can be lonely, because unless you start reaching out to other people in recovery and realizing that they have the same problem as you. Because I didn't really have to ban anybody that I did drugs with or drank heavily with from coming over, because when they realized that I didn't have any alcohol or drugs, they just stopped anyway.
They were real friends then.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Real, true friends.
right. Oh, really? You're not drinking anymore?
Oh, weird.
Okay, well, I'm going to be busy for the next 9 years. So, yeah, I didn't. Well, that problem kind of took care of itself.
It seems like it does too. I mean, people get really worked up on, oh, I have to find new people to talk to, or
Right.
you know, how am I going to ever abandon my friends? Especially younger people in recovery have a really hard time giving up their friends.
Right.
And I mean, I was the same way. Somebody told me you have to find a new friend group, and I told them, fuck off, these are my friends.
Right.
And I acted like there wasn't 7 billion other people in the world to become friends with.
Right.
I was like, these are the only people I have, you know? And there are all these toxic people, and in reality, I didn't necessarily need to abandon them or anything like that, because either they would stop hanging out with me, because I wasn't drinking, I wasn't using, I was no longer fun. Or I would just keep them at bay, you know, and keep them at arm's distance. So I didn't completely stop talking to them. I would see them, but I'd see them in a public space, or I would see them on my terms. I wouldn't like end up alone at their house on a Friday night, because this is really fucking bad. This is, you know, walking into the whorehouse. And so I love that analogy.
Yeah.
That's such a good analogy. But it's true. Reaching out and finding people and actually opening your mouth and saying something, how powerful that is. Because a lot of people do get lonely.
They do.
And they don't recognize the power of just sticking your hand out and shaking somebody's hand, introducing yourself.
Right.
Or sharing at a meeting. People are so terrified to share at a meeting. But
Sure.
then that gives somebody an automatic in to talk to you. And you
Right.
don't even have to approach them. Half the time they'll approach you.
Right.
Just opening your mouth it's such a huge deterrent on that whole loneliness thing.
Right. So I think also a lot of that comes from, and I battled with that for a long time. When my friends, my so-called friends, left because I wasn't drinking or drugging anymore, I had a really hard time finding friends. Mostly because when I started going to these meetings, I could barely even say my own name. I was too afraid to speak up. I was too afraid to talk about what I was going through in my recovery. A lot of that, and they teach you this in 12-step programs, is and it's part of an addict's way of thinking is that I'm unique. I'm unique. I'm the only one going through this. Even if they're saying they're going through this, it's obviously not the same because I'm unique. Like, you know, I'm the only one feeling this way. So I can't speak up at a meeting. And anybody that's been to 12-step meetings where they sit in silence because nobody wants to say anything, and you're thinking to I'm thinking to myself, well, I can't say anything because I don't have anything to say that anybody would relate to or want to hear because, you know, I'm so unique.
Sure.
The funny thing is everyone in that room is thinking that exact same thought, and that's why nobody's saying anything, and that's how ununique you are.
No, it's pretty like easy when you think about, like, kind of tying back in what Zach said. I went to a doctor and asked him for advice of how to stop drinking, and he told me, Mike, you got to be honest with your friends and let everybody know that's around you of your scenario. And he says, if your friends at that point don't respect your level of what you're actually trying to accomplish in your life, they are not your friends.
Right.
Avoid them.
Right.
If you're saying, hey, I am not drinking anymore, and they're laughing at you, saying, oh, yeah, right, Mike, here you go, here's another beer.
Right.
That's not a true friend.
Sure.
You know, and I listened to him, and I was obviously like in the middle of this massive fog where I was drunk still, and I was like listening to this doctor, and I was like, this is so simple and so stupid. Like, how in the world am I not figuring that one out? It's pretty like common sense. It's
Right.
either
But,
good
you know,
friend, bad friend.
Right. But you really don't start to get that until after you get a little bit of sobriety time on you and things start to clarify in your mind and going, oh, I get it, you know.
Right.
So the last thing you want to hear from somebody that's sober is their advice on how to get sober when you're not sober. You know, so until you get like a few days and you start clarifying in your mind, like I said, those clear thoughts start coming through, and then you're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
You know.
So before we started today, Kevin was actually on the ground in my kitchen doing yoga. He was stretching, getting ready for this, and I just wanted to talk to you about kind of your structure of recovery, like activities, things that you do, what keeps you like going. Do you have a structure?
So my structure is I'm busy by design. I keep myself very active. I did pick up yoga, and the reason is some people in meetings you'll see their sense of peace, and I decided that when I got into sobriety, I kind of wanted. I wanted a little bit of an aim to like what do I want to get out of it, and what's come to me more strongly than ever is I want peace of mind. I'm not sure that I actually thought that I wanted like millions of dollars, and if I got sober, like maybe I would get it. And I can't even tell you how many times I checked the mailbox to see if there was a check from God saying, "Hey, way to go. Here's $5,000 or something." Yeah, but that never happened. And so I started. So I started seeing certain things. Around the table of sober people, and I would say, I want that. This is, somebody who looked calm and at peace with themselves and could talk like in a very clear way, and then so I would start trying to find out what do you do, and then taking bits and pieces of I met this guy. He was in these meetings, and he would have like just the way he talked came from such an inner peace, and he was a recovering alcoholic meth addict, and I started asking him about what he does, and he did yoga, and I was like, well, I don't really know exactly what yoga is, but I'll give it a shot, and it's brought me a lot of peace, and it works hand in hand for me with meditation and teaching myself how to sit with myself in a quiet way without my mind scrambling altogether. And so I did pick up yoga. It makes me feel really, really good.
What about like reading, meditating?
So meditating, I'm super bad at it. I do it from time to time. I'm not gonna tell you that I do it every day. It's funny. I will come up with the most ridiculous reasons why not to meditate. When
Did you catch yourself actually doing it?
yeah, I super needed a cup of coffee. I'll meditate in a minute. But when I do it, I feel better. My entire day goes better, even if I can only find 5 minutes to meditate. It's a good mental recharge.
What is better? Like so a lot of people when they associate happiness, they associate it with the fun kind of drunk feeling, or where you're having a great time and you're laughing and you have no care in the world and When in reality, that's more joy and more fun than it is better. What is your version of what do you consider as better?
Well, I know this is going to sound a little bit weird, but I'm not sure that fun and joyfulness and laughter is the point. At least it's not become the point for me. The point is to get to a place of, this is my story, this is what works for me, is to get to a mindset of a place where I can attain joyfulness and laughter. And so it's getting to a place, a peace of mind where I'm okay about my day. And then I can go from there to seek joyfulness and laughter. Or I can get to a place where I can think about a problem and work it all the way through. That's not joyfulness and laughter, but it's something that needs to be done. And or get to a place where I can deal with thoughts and feelings of anxiety and learn how to control it. That's not joyfulness and laughter and fun either. But it runs on the same equivalent of things that I need. So as long as I can get into that center where I feel okay about my day and about where I am at, I'm okay with the way I feel. I can handle things like grief if someone near me dies, without thinking about going out. That's not joyfulness and laughter either, but it's just as important. And so getting to that place where I'm okay about the way I feel right now. I don't feel like I need to alter the way I feel at the moment. It's just the way I feel is the way I need to feel right now. And yeah, does that answer your question?
No, that's a really good
Answer. Yeah, that really hit the point.
Okay, good.
Good job.
So we are just about out of time. It goes faster than you think, huh?
Yeah, it went really fast.
So the last question that we have is to people that are listening. There's going to be people that are later on in recovery. There will be people that are early on in recovery. What advice do you have to give others that are listening, who are new to this, who are right now? They found us because they got on Google and they searched, how do I get sober? Or something like that.
Or they stumbled upon our Instagram.
Yeah, or they found our Instagram because Mike's a beast on Insta.
So the question was how? I'm sorry.
What advice would you give others as far as for a successful recovery?
For a successful recovery, I would say the most powerful tool is the willingness to become humble enough to ask for help. You're not going to lose anything. There's this saying in the program that I'm in. If it doesn't work for you, you're always welcome to go out and get your misery refunded in full for free. Just becoming humble enough to ask for help. Also, a sense of curiosity. What I had to end up. By the way, I just wanted to add that when I first attempted to, and I use that word on purpose, when I first attempted to fully, recover all at once, by what had happened with my employer at the beginning when I decided to try to become sober. It was a huge failure for me. Well, I can't say it was a huge failure because I learned a lot in the amount of time that I did stay sober, but I ended up trying to stay sober to prove to him that I could stay sober. And I didn't do it for myself. I literally did it to keep my job. And it didn't work. And no, I didn't keep the job either, but so what I ended up and what I still use today is I need to keep a sense of curiosity to about what it's going to be like to be sober. Because in my story, I started drinking and using on a regular basis when I was about maybe 15. I'm 49 now. So I don't know what it's like to stay years and years sober. I have no idea. But I do know what it's like to stay drunk and high for years and years and years. I know exactly what it's like. It's like Groundhog Day.
Sure.
And I've spent enough of that time. So I need to stay humble enough to be able to ask for help when I need help. And I need to stay curious. I wonder what it's going to be like. I need to look at it like an adventure. Even if it turned out to be a rather uneventful, boring day, well, I'd never had that uneventful, boring day sober before. So I need to stay curious about what it's going to be like to wake up tomorrow and live sober tomorrow, because I don't have that experience. And frankly, I've gone through enough of the other days that I'm no longer curious about it anymore.
You've seen it.
I've seen it. So, how I just think it would be really, really neat. I've dared to look into the future a little ahead of 24 hours sometimes, and think, wow, I wonder what it's like going to be like in a month. I wonder what kind of new thing I'll be doing that I never did when I was drunk or high. It's taken me into rock climbing, mountain biking, yoga, some pretty intensive yoga, and just all kinds of new adventures, reading books and asking questions. I even went back to school for a little bit and found out that I was actually educatable.
Yeah.
Like, who knew?
Teachable.
I can learn something.
You can learn.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been a ride. It's been really fun. It hasn't been boring at all.
Yeah.
So
No, that's really rad. I'm glad we were able to talk about this. And my only input on, at least on my side, is that I've been able to be happy to recognize the things that are around me, and be able to be, there is a way out.
there is.
And if anybody is wondering that, there is. And if you really remember of what it was like or before, or goals that you're setting for the future, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
There is.
If you tap into it, and it might feel unattainable for a year, a month, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, everyone has their own path, their own battle with it. And I think it's just, kind of the old cliche of to each their own, but I really do believe that people have to find that own feeling of what's going to make it work for them.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Just take recovery and make it your own. Take what you can get from people that you value and leave the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And make it your own recovery story and not someone else's.
Right on. Well, we are about out of time, so thanks again, Kevin.
Yeah, we'll have you back on. You're a good candidate. We're going to have to use you again.
We may even bring you on next week. Who knows?
Right on.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks again, and we are out of time. So until next time.
Episode 3. That's a wrap. Thanks again, Kevin. And
Thanks, guys.
We're out of here.